Hello? Let me know if you're there. My son's got me using new streaming software, and it's a little less than intuitive. I see we got Jordan, we got MV, who it must be evening where you are. Nice and early here for me. Okay, good, great. Good evening. Okay, great. I'm so glad to see people here. Very cool, very cool. And I, excuse me, scheduled it nice and early so that I can try to answer questions for people even around the world, because the last live that I did was in the afternoon here for me. And so a lot of people told me they couldn't make it. So, okay, hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. So I have a list of questions that people emailed me. There was actually lots of questions, which I totally appreciate. I'm going to be doing these lives at least once a month, hopefully two. Yeah, you can throw a question into the chat box for sure. Okay, wait, my son, okay, yeah, we see the chat box here, great. I was going to say, he put the tiny chat box there, which I was trying to, I'll leave it like this, I guess. Okay, so please put your questions in the chat box, but I'm going to go down a list of questions that people have sent me, and I'll just get started. But then if you put a question into the chat box, I will make sure I get to it since you're here. Oh, thank you. Today's my anniversary. 19 years, marriage, not for the faint of heart, but oh, happy anniversary followed by a blue balls issue. That's what we do here, right? Which is totally fine. I will absolutely get to that. Okay, so here's some things I'm going to talk about today, and then of course I will get to, I can't wait to get to the blue balls question, because everybody thinks they're going to die from not masturbating. And like I told you, my mentor has told me nobody's ever died from not masturbating, which I love that. That's one of his cliches. So, okay, so just keep checking here. Here's what I've got on tap, and I'm going to also get to what's in the chat box. So, how long until kind of ruminating thoughts about fantasy or whatever you've been watching or whatever's bore itself into your brain, how long until those thoughts go away? And of course, I'm going to try to give you an answer, but it is on a per person basis. I'm going to talk about how to deal with withdrawals, how to deal with withdrawal symptoms, how to make them easier, how to try to get through that time. Somebody asked me a question about what is a healthy sexual template? Like, if I'm not supposed to lust after people, what am I supposed to do? And I'm going to get to that. That's a great question. I had a bunch of questions, and they all had nuances to it, but surrounding the idea that, like, my childhood wasn't that bad. So, could there be traumas in there? I don't see anything major that made it that I went to pornography as a self-soothing technique with masturbation. I'm going to talk about that because that's really important, because trauma can be a little t or a low-grade trauma, or just family systems or family dysfunction can really impact, especially when it comes to shame. And we're going to talk about that. People have asked about my new program details and what's the deal with the approach and how the program falls out. So of course I'm going to talk about that. I have a question about bipolar, which is a really great question. A question on, do I just quit cold turkey? And another question about my anxiety's up and my blood pressure is up. Does that have anything to do with pornography? Yeah, thanks for putting comments in. This addiction's killing me. I feel ya, and I am here for you. I totally understand what you are going through, and I am here to help you. Okay, so let's start with how long until the thoughts go away. So what people have emailed me is, I haven't watched pornography in 100 days. I haven't watched pornography in 2 years, and I still get those intrusive thoughts, and then I catch a thought and it makes me want to go back. Some people have emailed me about fetishes. Fetishes are, preferences that really bore themselves into your brain because there may have been a trauma that created it in the first place. And then there might also have been just the burning of the neural pathway because you're using it over and over and over. If you continue to consume pornography that has that idea or body part or act or whatever in it. So literally, if you trample that neural pathway every day for 10 years, and then you've stopped trampling it for 1 year, but it's still in your mind, that neural pathway is still fired up and it's dying away, but it hasn't died away altogether. So I'm sorry to tell you, the answer is twofold, as I'm sure you can imagine. But the answer is that you have to keep staying the course without engaging in pornography or masturbation to that fantasy thought. So when you get that fantasy thought in your mind, if it's an intrusive thought and it's popping in, you must run. Run from that thought. And what I want you to think of it as, sorry, I'm getting a little cold. What I want you to think of it as is unwire and rewire. So I was thinking about this yesterday, like how can you have one snappy little conceptualization for that in the moment? So the way to think about it is, that thought comes into your mind, you can't grab it or you're going to continue to wire that thought in. You have to think about something else. So find something in your present environment. I know this isn't rocket science, but it is neuroscience. The thought comes into your mind. That means you're in your head. You are disassociating and going into fantasy to get that dopamine flood, to get that little hit of gratification to de-stress you and make you feel a little bit better in the world or whatever you have going on. The way to combat that is to come back into the world. So to do that, you focus on something in your environment and try to make it something pleasurable or pleasing that can give you a little dopamine hit. And I know this might take time to develop because those are the joys in life where, if you see a beautiful painting or a beautiful sunset, actually you should do this proactively so that you can do it in the moments. Set an alarm on your phone 3 times a day, stop what you're doing, come out of your head and look around and appreciate something that will bring you back to the present. It will help you from not dissociating. It will help you to come out of it when you start to go into fantasy, and it will help unwire the neural pathways that you've wired in for that thought for so long by unwiring it and rewiring it to get dopamine in the real world. So the second part of that answer is that you may have to stay vigilant against those thoughts. Now, vigilant means you're aware that you can't let your guard down. Hypervigilant is your guard is up all the time and it creates anxiety. Vigilant means, if you have a thought that's been intrusive or if you've been watching the same scene in pornography for 20 years, it's going to take a long time and it may never fully go away completely. It won't be there all the time, but it might not completely go away because we know that these neural pathways really burn themselves in. Delta Phos-B, transcription factor, concretes them. So you have to maintain a level of vigilance. Don't let yourself get sucked in, hence the proactive technique. Okay, so let me see. Why can't, there's a question in the chat box, which we will get to. Why can't I wire my brain with prostitutes? That's a really good one. People ask me all the time via email. Let's see, read Easy Peasy book, really helpful. Cool. I do not know that one, so I am going to. I was just telling someone yesterday, it's probably strange for a middle-aged woman to have a Kindle filled with quit porn books in it, but I'm going to add that one to my collection. What made me want to help people with porn addictions? I'm sorry to tell you, it's impacted my own life in a personal way. So as a cognitive neuroscientist, I'm like, you know what? When I found out about it, and I found out that it is literally hijacking people's brains and creating such terror on the inside for people and then terror on the outside with the ripple effect that it creates in families, partners, children. Honestly, I had to sit with it for a while. I liken it to someone with a porn addiction where I knew about it, but I was a little trepidatious to, talk about it in the world. But then I became trained as a sexual addiction recovery coach with one of the leading professionals in at least the United States. I would say I find him to be one of the highest caliber. So now here I am, probably for the rest of my life. So get ready for it. I have big plans. Okay, so let me just look real quick before they go away. Dating apps. We could be here all day. Let's see. Is porn-induced ED curable? That's a great one. I will definitely talk about that. So let's get rolling here. Let me see. Started. Okay, so let's move on. So that one was how long until the thoughts go away? It may take a while. They will start diminishing. Feel that, celebrate the small wins, but maintain vigilance. And you have to have a strategy. You can't sit around waiting for something to end. That if you're going to take away anything from this live today, don't just sit around waiting for this thing to go away. If you're severely overweight, you can't just sit around waiting to lose weight. That's not a thing. The thing is, learn how to eat healthy, learn how to exercise, get the right techniques, strategies, tools, and support, and start rocking it out. And the more strategies that you use, the better it will be for you in the short run. You will gain traction and momentum, and you will start moving forward. So if you're still having thoughts, don't sit around thinking, what can I do to get, why won't these thoughts go away? The better question is, what can I do to end these thoughts? And what you can do is push them away, get another thought in the moment, and engage with that. It will give you dopamine, and reward yourself for doing that. I know it seems simple, but it will help. Okay, now how to deal with withdrawal. It's the same thing. The same idea is that this goes with the cold turkey. I'm going to put these two together. Should I quit cold turkey, or, should I cheat in the right direction, as I call it? I think that if you can quit cold turkey, that will make it shorter of a time frame that you're dealing with withdrawal symptoms, and your brain has a better ability to come online more quickly because you are not giving it the dopamine hits that it wants. But if you've been watching a lot of pornography consistently, frequently, long sessions, especially if it's had a level of intensity, then that could be really difficult for you. And withdrawal symptoms are, they're like substance abuse addictions, but worse, because there is an internalized aspect that is much higher than when it comes to a substance abuse. What I mean by that is, if you've really been giving your brain the drug of choice, which is internally generated, then you could have bigger withdrawal symptoms the bigger you've been sucked in by pornography. So cheating in the right direction might be good for you. And I will tell you what that means in 1 second. But if you can go cold turkey and start engaging in your life, do something new. Do as many new things as possible. Get on purpose in your work. Come up with a project, something at work that you love, and take baby steps to make it happen. I know that's difficult because that's executive function, which comes out of your frontal lobe, but force yourself to do it. And I know forcing yourself is difficult also, but I also know you can do it if you want this bad enough. Committing and staying diligent and, developing perseverance and resilience is what you need to do here. So start with that, baby step. If you decide you're going to go cold turkey, add as many dopamine producing activities to your life. Now, if you are not succeeding, then you can cheat in the right direction. And sorry, I'm hot. I got to turn my air down. What that means is you will need to give your brain some of that dopamine release, but you don't want to do it with pornography. So if you're not going to go cold turkey, I totally encourage you to leave porn behind. You can, engage in a little bit of fantasy, try to make it as low level of intensity of fantasy, recognizing that you're giving your brain some dopamine. You would be weaning your brain off of dopamine and giving it some of the dopamine that it needs, but not the high levels of it for a long time. So try to make it that you give your brain a little bit of dopamine from masturbation with low level fantasy, short and sweet. Don't linger in that dopamine producing space, because that's exactly what your brain wants. You don't want to give it. That's feeding the addiction. It's like I always say, it's which wolf is going to win, the one you feed. You can't feed that. You have to, just give it a little to keep it at bay while you're doing all the other proactive techniques to get on track. Okay, so I'm just browsing here. Okay, so sexual template. What is healthy sexuality? In my new program, the longest video, which I really like, and I'm proud of, is a discussion on addictive sex versus healthy sexuality. And I know that so many people don't know what that is. But directly for the question that somebody asked me is, like, if I'm not supposed to lust after my partner or my lover, what am I supposed to do if I'm not supposed to lust after women? Does that make me, am I supposed to lust after men? No, that's not what we're talking about at all. And I have to ground us here in this discussion. I have to remind you that what we are talking about is pornography and objectified sex of other people's bodies, people you're not connected with. But what that makes you do is just see your partner as a body for your sexual gratification. So in the end, there's techniques that you can develop healthy lust towards your partner or your lover. That's healthy. That is a good sexual arousal template. Being able to keep fun acts that, I know I use the word fun a lot, but why not, right? Especially when we're talking about sex with your partner. So fun, engaging acts that are mutually agreed upon and everybody's having a good time and it's pleasurable, but it also creates happiness for two people. That is very different if you've devolved and disintegrated into just using your partner's body as a sexual object for your sexual gratification. And I know some people out there know what I'm talking about. So if that's not you, the person who asked me that question, then maybe you are having relational sex with your partner. Many people don't after they've watched pornography for so long. They get the sexual template of arousal of the scenes that they've watched for a long time, become buried in their brain, and then they try to act it out with their partner, who can totally feel that they're just being used as an object for your gratification. There's no connection. So the difference between addictive sex is it's just for intensity, or dopamine releases into your brain. It's one-dimensional. It's for you. There's lots of taking, no giving. Even when you're giving, it's for you still. So relational, healthy sexuality is give and take. It's not just about intensity. It's about eroticism and being able to tap into your healthy animal nature. That it's about sharing and connecting, not isolating and gratifying. And there's a lot of other aspects to it, but that's the short end of it. Okay, so I'm just peeking here. Yes, there is a correlation between hair loss, testosterone, and excessive ejaculation. And actually, I haven't made the video yet just because I need to get some more science. I have looked up the science on hair loss and excessive ejaculation from excessive masturbation, and it basically, long story short, it messes with the neurotransmitter chemicals in your brain so much that it throws off homeostasis. And I know I talk with a lot of men who have hair loss because of their pornography habit. So can your hair grow back? When your body restabilizes itself, everything or many things can come online. Betrayal trauma. I have a question about betrayal trauma. Yeah, you're being constantly triggered, and past lies in your relationship make you view men differently. For any women out there, I am super excited to tell you, and in the video I called her my homegirl, which I totally shouldn't, because she is a high caliber professional who has agreed to work with me on my passion project, this YouTube channel, and everything else that I'm going to put out there. Her name is Adria Sullivan. She is a licensed professional counselor. She's going to be joining me. We're going to be making podcasts, and she's going to be the voice for women so that we can keep it clear, and it'll be, everything that I think with her, and we're going to work together. She's been championing women's causes for a really long time. She has a large following of women in her practice, and she coaches too. So you can look for that soon, because betrayal trauma is a real thing, and likely there's gaslighting going on, there's minimizing, justifying, all that stuff that I talked about in the Ising video, and it's very damaging to relationships. It's difficult for me to spend lots of time here because I'm talking to mostly men. And I know people want me to talk to men and women, but it's difficult. The message is totally different for each party. For men, I want you to know, I'm just going to talk about this for a second, is that this is the way that I see it. And this is how I came up with the hijacker analogy, is that if you're really sucked into this pornography addiction, your brain's literally hijacked by this thing. It's the hijacker. So what the hijacker does, who is not your partner, and is not you if you're sucked into a pornography addiction, that hijacker grabs the wheel. He's driving the wheel. He is lying to you as a pornography consumer, and that makes you lie to your partner. So as a partner, if you struggle with betrayal trauma, that's real. That's PTSD. Science shows you're struggling with PTSD, but your partner's not doing it deliberately to you. And I think you can take solace in that. And especially if you approach how you're going to solve this thing for yourself possibly keeping your relationship together, possibly just growing stronger in your journey so that you got this thing no matter what the outcome is. When you know it's a hijacker, you can emotionally detach from the behaviors, as painful as they are. Because, like I tell all the men on this channel, this thing isn't your fault. And I really believe that. And that's why I'm not totally cut out to help women, because I'm very empathetic to the men whose brains are hijacked. It's an addiction. So if your brain's been totally hijacked by an addiction, it makes you do dumb things and you hurt the people around you because you're addicted. You don't mean to do that. So it's your responsibility, though. If you know you're in this thing, it is time to grab the wheel back. That's why I'm here making these videos and making the programs. I'm here to help you get the wheel back and keep the hijacker out of your car forever. If you're a partner, you can set boundaries. There's things you can do for yourself that can be really strong for you, but it can really encourage your partner to boot that hijacker out. Okay, so, really good question about public gyms. The public gym thing is what I already said to you is, if you can't go to a gym and not look at everybody, then you can't go to a gym. If you want to try to go to a gym once your brain becomes healthier, you have to do the unwire and rewire 1 second rule, because you cannot give your brain 100 dopamine hits while you're working out. It will severely crush your progress. Scientific reason for porn addiction. What is the scientific reason? This is a really good one. And porn can absolutely destroy your non-sexual relationships. I'm going to tell you it real quick because this is important. What happens is, porn's a super normal stimulus. I've made lots of videos on this. So when you consume it, especially if you're at a point in your life where you really need something to soothe your brain, dump some massive amounts of dopamine in it, get a little opioid painkiller neurotransmitters going. If you need that in your life and then you find pornography, especially internet pornography, I've been reading the science behind what's happening to young brains right now. It's devastating. The world's in for a world of hurt unless we work together, but I digress. So what happens is, your brain is hooked. When you watch pornography for the first time, it releases this flood of dopamine. And then what happens is, your brain will stop the dopamine to try to normalize it and to stabilize it. In doing so, the second time you watch porn, it has to put double the amount of dopamine into your system because it was stoppered last time. So what happens is, immediately your brain has gotten this massive amount of dopamine and oxytocin, which has coupled your brain to the screen. And it's not even about sex, it's about the dopamine hits. So if you start doing that more often for longer, you're basically flooding your brain with dopamine all the time, or consistently and frequently. And I work with so many men, I work with women too, but I work with so many men who I can see in their brains when they've had a slip or a relapse on their brain training graphs. And I'll tell you about the headband in a minute. I can see that their brain has this insane flood of dopamine. On the brain training graphs from the Muse headband, you can see how calm your brain is. And so it's difficult to have a completely calm brain just because life is life, you know? But when someone has a slip or a relapse, their brain will be 97% calm. It's like so low and it's just massively flooded with dopamine. It's down 97, 98% calm. But then the next day, what happens is there's a cortisol spike. So the A effect from the screen is you get this massive flood of dopamine. You feel numbed out, your brain feels good, you're just, loosey-goosey. That helps you to deal with your life. But then there's the B effect of cortisol that rushes in to offset all that dopamine. So it creates the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde across your pornography cycle, which I teach you all about in my new program. So what happens is that can totally impact your non-sexual relationships, going back to that question, because people never know what version they're going to get. Are they going to get the dopamine dude who's happy because he just got some hits of dopamine? Or are they going to get the Grinch dude who hasn't had a dopamine hit in a day or two? Excuse me. Okay, so I have a question about exams. So, it really has devastating effects on your brain. And the most difficult part for me is when people are sucked into that cycle, they can't even see it. And so going back to the betrayal trauma question is, if you're a partner trying to help your man come out of this pornography addiction, if you're really sucked in, you can't even see the forest for the trees. And science proves this. When you're sucked in it, you think it's other people attacking you because you don't realize how this ripple effect is impacting other people until you step away from it. And so when you leave porn behind and you leave masturbation behind and you can back yourself out a little, even then you don't always see it. But the way that you're acting for men when they get sucked in is the hijacker. He's like literally just hijacked your brain and making you act these ways. So there's combativeness, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's OCD-like symptoms that can happen when you're at those lows. And then you're feeling great and you're on top of the world when you have the highs coming. Okay, so let me just go on to the next question so I make sure I get the ones that... Okay, so that'll lead me to bipolar. Someone asked, what about bipolar? Could pornography habit, I've been doing it for 10 years, could that create bipolar? The answer is yes. But you may have had tendencies to bipolar before that, because we know that if you get sucked into a pornography habit, there is a neurological, biological, psychological, social component to it. So there's all these components. So you may have a brain that is more susceptible to wanting to use pornography because it swings high and low. And the way that I've always talked about it, I'm sure if you've watched my videos, you hear me talk about the extra slow speed and the extra fast speed. I also think about our brain's energy as a pendulum. So let me tell you the first part real quick. If your brain's using tons of excessive fast speed, then you're manic. You're high, you're buzzing during that phase, especially when it comes to sexuality or pornography or masturbation. You might be, overly zealous in the sexual department. You might be engaging in a lot of pornography. We know that's going to flood your system with dopamine. It's going to make you feel good. You probably are even higher and you're kind of doing your thing. Then you're going to swing lower because of that B effect of cortisol rushing into the system to offset the massive amounts of dopamine. So what I talk about and what my job's been for a long time is neurological regulation, regulating your brain, bringing this fast speed down, bringing the slow speed down, bringing calm focus speed up in the middle. That's what the brain training headband does. What that affords you then is that your brain is not swinging like this, like a pendulum. A pendulum has to swing as far to the left as it does to the right. That's the essence of a pendulum. When you regulate your brain, it only swings like this. So something can happen and you don't go into a depression because you only swing this far. And then if something great happens, you only swing this far. When your brain's really dysregulated, that swinging is going, seriously to the left and to the right. Okay, blue balls question. I promised that I would. And here's the answer, but I do have to get more science behind it, but I know what I'm talking about. I get this question in the comments all the time too. Like, isn't it just healthy for me to masturbate to offset, prostate cancer? No, you don't need to offset prostate cancer every single day. The likelihood you're going to get prostate cancer is low enough that you don't need to have this massively proactive masturbation habit to offset prostate cancer. At the same time, the whole blue balls thing, your brain has been trained to ejaculate every day. So you will have to retrain your brain to not need to have that release every single day. So there's going to be some discomfort because your brain's used to it. Like anything, the same thing with pornography, that if you need to watch it every day and then you go 2 days, your brain's going to go, woo, I'm used to getting this dopamine release every 1 day. Why are you making me go 2 days? And if you try to go 10 days, it's the same thing. Your body and brain have to recalibrate itself. So we know this from nocturnal emissions that your body will release itself if it needs to. That is not a slip or a relapse. It's totally healthy and it happens to a lot of people and it's okay. It's good. It means your brain is recalibrating itself and rewiring itself. Do you need to worry about the fact that you're going to die from blue balls? No, you're not. It may be uncomfortable, but your body's going to take care of it for you as your brain rewires itself. Can you handle discomfort? I know it stinks. Discomfort stinks for all of us, but I like to tell people you might need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I stole that one from Jillian Michaels because I always use the Jill. I borrowed it. I repurposed it. I didn't steal it. That, she always says in her workout apps, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. The same applies here. Learning how to live with some discomfort as your brain is rewiring is par for the course. That's why doing as many proactive offensive strategies to get the dopamine flowing, to get your frontal lobe working again, to resensitize the reward center in your brain can really help you out. Okay. So I have a question about looking at real women. If you're looking at real women in the world, that is what I've already talked about this. It's just objectification. Your brain wants a hit off of looking at their body. So that's not healthy. Like, I know your brain's been conditioned to do that for a really long time, so you don't even get that that's not a healthy way to interact with other people. What is a healthy way is making eye contact. Let's go with that. That's an awesome strategy that's in my new program. If you make eye contact with a person and you don't look at any particular body part, you're now seeing them as a whole person, a mind, a body, and a spirit. And our bodies are just our forms. So they don't even necessitate you to overlook them. You need to look into that person's eyes to make a connection with them. So when you're at the gym, look at people's eyes. Don't look at their body parts, because you will just be treating them as an object. If you're just looking at a person's body part, you're objectifying them. It will keep this habit going. You don't have to stop. The wet dreams are nocturnal emissions. You don't have to stop them. If you're having them, it's your body recalibrating itself and your brain rewiring itself. Okay, high blood pressure and oversweating, excessive fapping, I'll tell you why. It's because if you have a masturbation habit, it's just what I said. It always goes back to your brain. I'm sorry to tell you, which is why I'm here, is that if your brain is using a lot of slow speed and a lot of fast speed simultaneously, they will be feeding each other. It's a comorbid brain pattern, not the healthy one, the one in the extremes. So what it does is it will jack up your blood pressure, because the fast brain speed increases blood pressure because it increases the speed in your brain. And you've probably felt it before when, like, if you were nervous or if something happened, right? Back in caveman days, if you turned and there was a tiger there, you would have this spike and adrenaline rush because your brain just went from medium calm focus speed to super stressed out speed. That is what increases your blood pressure, increases your heart rate. It keeps your system in this anxious mode while also keeping it in this slow, overwhelmed, dragged down mode. The way out is to reduce those speeds by not watching pornography and masturbating, and by getting on purpose in your life to crank up the medium speed in the middle. So it's the same concept for social anxiety, which someone just put a question out there. Social anxiety comes from the frontal lobe. The science behind pornography shows you create hypofrontality. The frontal lobe stops working because it has been, basically the reward center has been desensitized, because you've been hitting the gas, the easy button, the instant gratification button of pornography. It fries out the reward center. The frontal lobe is the brake that kind of breaks that for you and creates, healthy impulse control and compulsion control. That stops working. So when your frontal lobe doesn't work, socialization lies in the frontal lobe. And I'm trying to think, I think it might be in the book, The Teenage Brain, but I know there's a study, and I think there's a YouTube video about it. But the idea of the study was they put people teenagers in a glass window front of a store. And the reason that the teenage brain is important for our discussion here is because we know that pornography basically delays development or shrinks back development of the frontal lobe. So even if you're 60, your frontal lobe is like a 13-year-old because of hypofrontality. It hasn't fully developed to do all the thinking skills and all the socialization skills. So back to the story, they put teenagers in a storefront, and when people walked by, they got massive amount of anxiety when people would look in the glass window of the storefront. They put adults in the same glass window, and adults didn't care, because adults' frontal lobes were grown and developed and healthy, and they understand that people are just walking by and they're not judging them, and there's nothing to be that anxious about. That is the difference. And that's where social anxiety comes from. And you are right to hate social anxiety. Some people have some social anxiety in there. People who are more introverted. I've told you all before that I'd love to just stay home talking to a camera all day long, but I force myself to do appointments with people, and I absolutely make myself go out into the world. And I have strategies because, especially when I push my limits, it gives me, healthy amounts of social anxiety, or, a little bit. But if you have debilitating social anxiety, there is something wrong with your frontal lobe. And if you've been watching pornography, it likely is in that brain pattern. Okay. I've got 1,000 questions about the significance of morning wood in porn-induced ED. Well, it depends, but for so many people, what happens is their brains have been conditioned for morning wood, which, drives me nuts when people kind of talk about that as a healthy thing, because your brain has been conditioned over whatever amount of time you've been watching pornography to become aroused on a schedule. So not every person in the whole world suffers or struggles with or cares about morning wood. And I know a lot of people do because of pornography. So I'm not sure what you mean by the significance in porn-induced erectile dysfunction, but you mean you have morning wood, but you can't get an erection other times? Maybe you could throw that in the chat box if that's what you mean. But what happens is that if you have porn-induced erectile dysfunction, you need massive amounts of arousal. Your brain might be doing that in the night for you if you've conditioned yourself to watch pornography before you go to bed. We know that the last thing you think about will stay in your, subconscious, for lack of a better word, while you sleep, which is why I try to put good things in my brain before I go to sleep. And I try not to check anything that could linger in my brain hours before I go to sleep. So I stop checking my emails, I stop checking comments, I stop thinking about anything real, and then I try to hang out with my fam squad and hang out with my friends and just chill, only put good things in or kind of mindless things, so that when I go to bed, there's nothing in there. So likely, you are putting all of that in your brain, and it might be creating more arousal overnight, and then hence the morning wood. Let's see, day 18. Yeah, I can encourage you. You're encouraging everybody. Thank you, Joshua, for encouraging people, because what I am most proud of on this totally awesome YouTube channel that I didn't even mean to create, it was just me starting to voice what I know to help people, is how awesome you all are. And in supporting me, I have to tell you, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it, but I have to tell you how much I totally appreciate that, and how much you will support each other. It is growing to be this totally awesome community, and I want you to know that I am super proud of you all for being here, because I know it's tricky. When I tell you that in the comments, I answer all the comments myself, which is why I don't do it as often as I should, because I want to be able to answer your questions and give you the support, because I think it's totally awesome that you are joining this movement to make yourself a better version of yourself and help everybody around you. What I wanted to tell you is I have awesome plans for being able to make this channel what it deserves to be. So I have to make some money. I'm sorry to tell you, it's just energy, as you hear me say, but I need to be able to support the growth of this channel. So I am working on it. I'm going to hire people to help me. I have big plans, so you can look for it in the future. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So let me answer one more question from here. Shaming around sex and family of origin. Then I'm going to I just read something that I thought, focus and concentration, because I know people want to know, and I basically just answered that. But let's talk about family of origin stuff and trauma. So there's big T trauma. Something bad happened to you. Emotional abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse. We know there's a high correlation between abuse, pornography use. That's kind of back in the day, because now it's kind of different because it's just so accessible. What the new science that I was just reading shows, and I thought this was a really good way that this new study put it, and I think her name's Gail, her last name's Horner. She's a nurse practitioner who put together, there's two studies. One's a 20-year review of how pornography affects young brains, and the other is by this nurse practitioner that I was just looking at. But what it shows is the way that the verbiage that they used was that even if you're in a family that wasn't nurturing, so it doesn't have to be big T traumas. Small T traumas, meaning mini traumas, can be that you're in a family that nobody pays attention to you. Your needs aren't being met. You don't feel the love that you want to. When you go to your parent, they're not there for you. Even something that I read recently too, and I try really hard not to do this to my own children because I'm trying to be the best version of myself on a minute by minute basis, is that making time for your kids. So many parents couldn't even make time for their children, that just being there when your kiddo needs you. And my kids know I'll literally stop anything if they need me in any moment. I'll cancel appointments. I hardly ever do it. Thankfully, they're healthy, but they know if they need me, I will literally be there in 1 second. I'll drop everything. They're the most important things that to me to be able to grow them up. We didn't grow up with that. So I grew up in a family of 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. Proverbial Brady Bunch, even though I tell my family that the Brady Bunch had problems. My family doesn't like conflict. Nobody confronts anybody. And, that's an emotional immaturity. And so there's no conflict resolution because everybody would pretend conflict didn't exist. That in and of itself is an unhealthy family dynamic, even though you can't see anything, which is why I've done all the work on myself. But so that can impact you, just not being nurtured in a big family, just because your parents are keeping everybody alive. That can really impact you. Now, how does that go to shame? How that goes to shame is that many people tell me that they were shamed around sexuality. And sometimes it has to do with religion, which of course I don't want to go there here. But shaming around sexuality is what creates going to an unhealthy sexual outlet because we're sexual beings. So I, with my beautiful children who are now teenagers, and I'm trying my hardest to do a good job at it, try to develop healthy sexuality, show them how to be careful, but they're becoming sexual beings. They have boyfriends and girlfriends, teaching them how to keep it at healthy levels as they grow into adulthood without shaming them. And it's a difficult job, I'll tell you that. So, people write to me in emails that, I'm sorry to say this because I know you're a mom, but, my mom wasn't there for me. And, sometimes I haven't been there for my kids just because we're all human and it's not out of malice. Just I didn't even know what happens so many times. I don't even know they're going through a thing. They won't even tell me, so I can't be there. But then that makes them feel isolated. And when I find out that they need me, I at least offer that up. But the way out is forgiveness. You have to forgive your parents for capacity. And I've done this work myself where, my parents didn't do anything out of malice, but it created some junk just because of the dynamics and the family systems. And the way out is to forgive them, to understand that if they deliberately hurt you, they are hurt people. Only hurt people hurt people. If they weren't there for you, it's because they didn't have the capacity. So let me see here. So that is how shame. So don't shame anybody. I try not to shame anybody ever. If somebody makes a mistake, if somebody hurts you, if somebody says something terrible to you, that if they attack you, they are hurt. That is their wounds. And what do hurt people need? They need love. So if you attack somebody, hopefully you can give yourself that grace, because grace is the way out, and forgiveness. Okay, so let me see. Excessive masturbation affect body health. It literally sucks the life out of you. If you excessively masturbate, and that's the whole idea behind semen retention, which I don't even like talking about that. I don't think anybody should, engage in semen retention in that idea. I think you should create healthy sexuality and engage in relational sex and not worry about, how long your semen is being retained or not. I know people think they gain power from that, and it's true if you're excessive in the opposite direction. But if you have a lovely schedule or life of, engaged sexual relationships, then you don't have to worry about if your tank is full or if it's empty. You are living a balanced life. It's all about balance. Everything is about balance. And of course, when I talk with you about these topics, balance, balance, balance. So if you're totally retaining your semen, is that going to completely fill you up and make you invincible? No, but for a time it might, because if you've been totally draining yourself, then you will feel great. Okay, so I can't even survive a day without fapping. Any tips? Yep. Make a plan right now. If you want to make this day one, you can't say, just go back to the weight loss analogy. You can't say, I'm going to drop 25 pounds and put on, lean muscle mass. Wish me luck. You can't do that. You have to make a plan. So make a plan for tomorrow and make it so that you're engaged in a balanced way across the day. Don't give yourself time to engage in pornography or masturbation. Fill that time with something else that connects you to another person. I know it's difficult in COVID, but that also connects you and it gives you dopamine. And then reward yourself. Reward yourself for the small wins. Let's see. No fat tank so full. Let me see. Porn-based fetish really go away. I answered this before, is that it can go away for sure. A porn-based fetish can totally go away, but it might linger for some people, and you may have to become vigilant, not hyper-vigilant where you're stressed out about it all the time, but being aware that it might be creeping in. And I know that this might be loaded, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Depending upon what that interest is in terms of fetish, so many of them are completely unhealthy and cannot be integrated in a healthy way. So if it's an unhealthy fetish, don't even try this. But if it's, on a continuum of something that your partner might do and be interested in and enjoy, which also is loaded because a lot of times partners pretend to enjoy stuff because of codependency. But if you can integrate it in a healthy way and it gives your brain more dopamine than it would without that, then you can integrate it in a healthy way. But if you can't, then it's better to, leave it behind. You're welcome for spending my time with you because this is really super important to me and I'm really glad to be here. So I'm so glad so many people are here. It's totally awesome and I really appreciate it. Let's see. I'm trying to see what we got here.